Are you thinking of moving to Gig Harbor, but curious about what the surrounding areas may be like and if those might be a better fit for you? If so, then this is the video for you. Hey everybody, my name is Darren Rivers. I am the Northwest Realtor and welcome to Living in Gig Harbor. Hey, if you're new to this channel, why don't you subscribe? You could hit that little bell over there, get all your notifications of all the videos I send out, and today we are going to talk about the areas surrounding Gig Harbor. So maybe Gig Harbor isn't the exact fit for you, so let's talk about what areas surround it and what those areas have to offer. So when we talk about the areas surrounding Gig Harbor, we're going to talk about three different areas. We're going to look up north into South Kitsap and Port Orchard area. We're going to look west into the Key Peninsula area. And we're going to look kind of southeast a little bit into Tacoma, University Place area. If you go directly west, guess what? You're in the Puget Sound. So you're probably not going to live out there unless you're on a sailboat. So let's talk about South Kitsap and the Port Orchard area. And here's a map of it right now, so you can see it's just barely north of Gig Harbor. And let's go into the pros and cons of what South Kitsap has to offer. Pros and cons of South Kitsap. Let's first talk about housing costs and overall cost of living. So you can see this graph right here. I'm going to show you what the average home price in Gig Harbor is currently, and you can see it's $833,000. Well, if you just go slightly north, cross up into the Kitsap County line, and go up into that Port Orchard, South Kitsap area, your average price point for a house is only just over $600,000. So huge savings, over $200,000 less for a home in South Kitsap on average compared to Gig Harbor. And of course, that's going to trickle down to your property taxes are going to be less. The overall cost of living is definitely less. So that is an absolute pro or plus to live in South Kitsap versus Gig Harbor. Now, one of the cons, or possible cons anyway, of living in South Kitsap versus Gig Harbor is depending where you work, you might have a further commute. If you're driving to Tacoma or Seattle or something like that, you're obviously going to be further away. So I'm going to put another little map up here right now. You can see the average commute time to downtown Tacoma from right in the center of South Kitsap is 25 minutes. And now that's of course no traffic. That was done on a Sunday, middle of the afternoon. And that's from right there in the center. You can be a lot further out depending on how far off the freeway you may be. It's a big geographic area, so you might have to add 20 minutes onto that. Or maybe not. Maybe you're right next to the freeway and it's a pretty easy 25-minute commute. And of course, if you're driving north and going up to Bremerton or something, well then gosh, maybe it's a pro because you'll be closer than you were than if you were living in Gig Harbor. So pro or con, depending where you work, depending where you're commuting to, things like that, just know that it's further away from Tacoma and Seattle than Gig Harbor is. Another comparison from South Kitsap to Gig Harbor is obviously going to be the school district. This is especially important to you, of course, if you have a family and kids in school or plan on having a family and sending them to the public schools. So, there's a little bit of a difference in the rankings between the Peninsula School District, which is Gig Harbor, and the South Kitsap School District, and I'm going to put those graphs for you up right now. This comes from niche.com, and as you can see, Gig Harbor School District is rated as a B+, whereas South Kitsap School District is rated as a B-. So not that far apart. You're not talking like an A and a D, but there is a little bit of a difference there, and there's kind of a reputation difference and things like that. Just something to be aware of and be mindful of if you are considering living between Gig Harbor and Port Orchard. Another very important consideration, especially for those of you that work from home, is internet availability and how strong that signal is. For the most part, in Gig Harbor, you have Xfinity internet services, which are top-notch, and it's just not an issue at all. People have very good success with that. South Kitsap, it runs the whole gamut. You could have wave cable out there and have pretty good internet. You could be in places where it's just not available and you're looking at dial-up or CenturyLink or DSL or something like that, and the speeds are much, much slower. So in South Kitsap, it's not necessarily a total done deal, but you're gonna have to be really careful on where you're looking to purchase and if the internet availability there meets your needs. It's just a really big consideration, especially in today's world when so many people are indeed working from home. And the last thing to go over when comparing South Kitsap Port Orchard area to Gig Harbor is just kind of what the environment you want to be in. For the most part, and again, this is going to be a case-by-case basis, but for the most part, if you want land and space and acreage and privacy, you're going to have more luck with that out in South Kitsap as compared to Gig Harbor. Gig Harbor, some of that is available, but man, it's going to be expensive. Like we mentioned a little earlier in the video, the average price point in Gig Harbor is much higher, and if you're adding acreage to that, well, it goes up quite a bit from there. South Kitsap, you can find it for a pretty reasonable price still. So something to consider. It just kind of depends what environment you want. Do you want space or do you want urban living? That sort of thing. So if you're looking for acreage, equestrian farms, things like that. Equestrian farms, is there such a thing? We're gonna leave this in there just because, I want to. So anyway, more space is available out in South Kitsap as compared to Gig Harbor. Next, let's look out to the west at Key Peninsula. And again, there's some pretty big pros and pretty big cons to living out on the Key Peninsula. And here's a map of it right now. You can see it's west of Gig Harbor proper. You go across the pretty bridge and it can go a long way. It doesn't take very long to get out to the beginning of it, but shoot, you could keep driving for 35 minutes or so. The housing prices out there are much cheaper. You can see, I'm gonna put the graph up here, the average house price is right around $550,000. So now we're getting close to $300,000 less than if you were in downtown Gig Harbor. So much more affordable out there for sure. And so, it's always nice to have a lower house payment. Now, a downside of living out there is you are a long way from anything, okay? So here's the map again. This is commute time, and I just kind of picked somewhere right in the middle of Key Peninsula. I actually picked Vaughn. No traffic, anything like that. It's 35 minutes to downtown Tacoma. However, you got to consider going over that pretty bridge. So if you're going during rush hour, you could certainly add some time on for that. And as you can see, according to the map, you can go a long way past Vaughn. So you might have an hour drive to Tacoma. Or even to any major shopping, Costco, Target, Home Depot, things like that. You got to come all the way across the bridge into Gig Harbor, and it's just a long way. Now, obviously, some people really like that. They like being out in the privacy and away from people, and if that's what you like, well, then this is a plus. But it's going to take you some time to get to some of those stores, maybe schools, maybe work. Hospitals, doctors' offices, things like that, they're all going to be quite a bit further away if you live way out on Key Peninsula. Now, an upside for Key Peninsula is, guess what? It's all part of Peninsula School District. So it's the exact same school district as Gig Harbor itself. You actually go to Peninsula High School. There's only there's 3 public high schools in Gig Harbor, 2 main ones, Gig Harbor and Peninsula High School, and then there's an alternative school called Henderson Bay. But that's much smaller. It's got like less than 100 students. So the 2 main high schools, if you live way out on Key Peninsula, you are part of one of them. And as I showed you a little bit earlier, it's got a really good rating according to niche.com at a B+ rating, and that's rated compared to all other school districts across the country. So there you go. It's in Gig Harbor School, or Peninsula School District, part of Gig Harbor. Now here's a problem with living way out there, is your internet might be suspect, especially the further out you go. You just never know. So again, really pay attention to who the internet provider may be, what your options are if you're considering living out there. If you're working from home and you need high-speed stuff and do video, be very, very careful with that. Not that it's totally unavailable, but that's something to really consider when you're looking out there. The internet access, the further you go out to the rural areas, it's just not going to be as good. That's just how it is. So let's move on to Tacoma. So there's obviously some pluses and minuses, pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages, however you want to say it, to living in Tacoma versus Gig Harbor. So one thing, housing costs. The average is cheaper. but take this with a grain of salt. And I'm going to put this graph up right now. The average home price in Tacoma is $531,000. But there is a wide range. Tacoma is a relatively big city of around 250,000 people. So you can live in the areas where, you know, it's more depressed. The home prices are much lower. But guess what? They have their multi-million-dollar homes as well. So you can find any gamut, any neighborhood, super high-end to not so high-end, and a wide range of home prices. But on average, the average home price is a few $100,000s less than if you were living in Gig Harbor. Now let's talk about school district when you're comparing Tacoma School District to Peninsula School District, which is Gig Harbor. So as I already showed, Gig Harbor Peninsula School District rating is a B+, Tacoma is a B-. So again, it's a little bit of a drop, not a huge drop, but a little bit of a drop. Obviously a much bigger school district. It's huge. You're comparing a population of around 40,000 people in the greater Gig Harbor area, unincorporated area included, to Tacoma, where you're talking, you know, close to 250,000 people. So it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges, but if you're looking at pure ratings, Tacoma ranks a little bit lower than the Peninsula School District. What about your commute? Well, it depends where you're commuting to, obviously. If you work in Tacoma, in the Port of Tacoma, in Seattle, or anywhere over there, obviously you're going to be much closer to those places than if you were living in Gig Harbor. Another advantage to living in Tacoma is then you don't have to deal with the Tacoma Narrows Bridge and the bridge toll, which they charge you one way. That's something if you were living in Gig Harbor and working in Tacoma, well, you're driving across the bridge and you're going to pay that toll every single day that you go across. If you're in Tacoma, well, boom, you're already there and you don't have to worry about it. Obviously, living in a big city such as Tacoma, you are not going to have to worry about internet access. It's going to have all the best stuff available. So if you're working from home or you're a gamer or whatever you want to do on the internet, it is going to be a non-issue in Tacoma, or any city for that matter. It's just a non-issue. So you don't even have to worry about that at all. And while we're talking about Tacoma, if you want to learn more about Tacoma itself, I have another YouTube channel called Living in Tacoma. So make sure you subscribe to that, and I can teach you everything about Tacoma and what it has to offer. The last place I want to talk about today is University Place, and I'm specifically calling out University Place for a couple different reasons. A, it borders Tacoma. You're across the Tacoma Narrows Bridge from Gig Harbor, so you're still right there when it comes to commute and everything like that. I mean, you're a 10-minute drive from downtown Tacoma. You don't have to worry about that bridge toll, anything like that. You simply cross a street from Tacoma and you're in University Place. So it seems kind of like one seamless transition. But there are some distinct differences to living in UP versus Tacoma. One of those differences, and this is a very big upside that lots of people are drawn to, is University Place has one of the best school districts in the state. According to niche.com, it has an A rating. It is like way up there. It's recognized around the country as being one of the better school districts. So huge difference from being in University Place to Tacoma in regards to the rating of the school district. When it comes to the average housing price in University Place, as especially compared to Tacoma, because you're right there, it goes up quite a bit. It's just over $700,000. Now this is a little bit less than the $800,000 some odd dollars that the average school or home price is in Gig Harbor, but it's certainly significantly higher than the average home price in Tacoma. And it's kind of more comparable to Tacoma. Like I said, it's literally the neighbor. There's nothing separating it other than you cross the street and you're in one city to the next. So a lot of the reason why that home value is more in University Place is it's really desired because of that A school rating. It's just people want to live there because they want to put their kids in good schools. Again, internet is going to be a non-issue here. You're just going to have the high-speed stuff. It's going to be plumbed to virtually every house. So a non-issue for internet in University Place, anywhere in Tacoma. You go Lakewood, any of those places, you're going to be just fine with internet service. So that is something you just don't even have to worry about. So there you have it, folks. That is a video talking about the areas surrounding Gig Harbor. So we went to the north and talked about South Kitsap and the Port Orchard area. We went out west and talked about Key Peninsula. We went to the southeast, talked about Tacoma and University Place. And of course, I mentioned if you go directly west, you're gonna end up wet in the Puget Sound. So hopefully you liked this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. All my information's right here, my phone number, my email. Feel free to reach out to me in any way, and we'll see you on the next video.